The twin suns of Auralis Prime bathed the golden city in soft light. From the shining towers of the capital to the crystal domes that touched the sky, everything looked alive, glowing with colors only alien eyes could name. It was a day of celebration, and yet under the glittering skies, tension filled the air. Today was the choosing ceremony, when Princess Saralyn of the Varelian Empire would select her life's companion and political partner. The event happened only once every 1,000 years, and beings from every star system had gathered for it. The Palace of Light, built on a floating platform above the clouds, hosted thousands of guests, each representing a different species and world. They came wearing gems, crowns, and shimmering armor. Lords, merchants, warriors, all wanted the same thing: the hand of the most desired woman in the galaxy. Saralyn, the heir to the throne, was not only known for her beauty, but also her mind. She had been trained in politics, command, and galactic history since childhood. Her voice could calm storms, her decisions could move fleets. But despite all that power, she lived like a prisoner of her crown. Inside her private chamber, she looked out at the sunrise. Her attendants bowed deeply behind her. The princess's silver-blue hair fell over her shoulder as she whispered, "They all come for power. Not one comes for me." She turned and faced her mirror, her eyes glowing softly with violet light, the mark of royal blood. She smiled sadly, and yet they call this day a celebration. The doors opened and Captain Rylan, her loyal guard, stepped inside. "Your Highness, the guests await you." "The ceremony begins in 1 hour." Saralyn nodded. "And among them?" Rylan hesitated. "Every great house of the galaxy, my princess. Even the humans." She turned, her interest caught. "Humans, the newcomers?" "Yes," Rylan said. "Representatives from the Terran Union. They arrived just this morning. They were invited only as observers. No one expected them to attend such an event." Saralyn's eyes brightened slightly. "Humans, the species that survived on a death world, the ones who turned ruin into strength." She smiled faintly. "Perhaps they'll be more interesting than the usual suitors." When the ceremony began, the Hall of Celestials blazed with golden light. 1,000 beings stood beneath the grand dome as music filled the air. Saralyn entered the hall, her gown flowing like liquid light, her crown gleaming softly. Every guest bowed, some kneeling so low their foreheads touched the crystal floor. At the far end of the hall, the Emperor, her father, sat upon the throne of radiant energy. His voice boomed, "The time has come. Let the princess make her choice that the stars may witness her decision." One by one, the suitors stepped forward, nobles from distant worlds, each boasting of their strength, wealth, or power. They offered gifts of rare crystals, worlds, and fleets. But Saralyn's eyes showed no emotion. She listened politely, thanked them, and moved on. Then, near the back of the crowd, something caught her attention. A group of humans stood quietly among the alien guests. They wore no royal armor, no jewels, no glowing robes. Just simple uniforms, gray and practical. They looked out of place in the grand hall, surrounded by creatures twice their size or glowing with strange colors. But one human stood at the front, tall, calm, his eyes steady. His name was Elias Ward, an engineer from Earth. He had no title, no army, no reason to be here. He had come only as part of a small delegation to observe the Empire's customs. When he saw the princess looking his way, he froze. He hadn't meant to attract any attention. Saralyn stopped walking. The hall grew silent. Every noble turned to see what had caught her gaze. Whispers began to rise. "Why is she looking there? Humans, what are they doing here?" Surely she wouldn't. Saralyn's steps echoed as she moved through the crowd, passing by jeweled warriors and alien princes. Her attendants hurried to follow, confused. Elias stood still, unsure whether to bow or move. She stopped in front of him. For a moment, neither spoke. Her eyes studied him carefully, not with arrogance, but curiosity. Elias bowed slightly. "Your Highness," he said quietly, his voice respectful but not fearful. "You do not kneel?" she asked softly. He looked up. "Where I come from, kneeling is for gods and those we love. You are neither to me, Your Highness." The words were simple, but in the silent hall they struck like thunder. The nobles gasped, shocked that a human dared to speak so directly to the heir of the Empire. But instead of anger, Saralyn smiled, and a small genuine smile. "The first of the day. You speak honestly," she said. "Most here only tell me what they think I wish to hear." Elias shrugged slightly. Then maybe that's why they all sound the same. A soft laugh escaped her lips. She turned to face the crowd. Enough, she said. Her voice carried across the hall. The choice is made. The Emperor leaned forward, frowning. Saralyn, what do you mean? She turned back toward Elias. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Everyone desires me, she said clearly, her voice echoing through the chamber. But I want you, human. The silence that followed was absolute. Then chaos, nobles shouted. The council members rose to their feet. Some demanded to know if it was a joke. Others cried that it was blasphemy, that a human could not stand beside the royal line of Virelians. The Emperor's face darkened. Daughter, do you understand what you are saying? Saralyn stood tall, her gaze calm. I do. For once in my life I am choosing for myself. Elias stared at her, stunned. Princess, I think you may be making a mistake. I'm no prince. I'm just an engineer. That is exactly why, she said softly. You did not come here to seek power. You did not bow for favor. You are the only one who looked at me as if I were a person. The Emperor raised his hand, silencing the hall. Enough, this choice will be reviewed. Guards, escort the human delegation back to their quarters until further notice. As the guards approached, Saralyn turned sharply. No one touches him, she ordered. Her voice, calm yet powerful, stopped them in place. Even her father looked surprised. The Emperor exhaled slowly. You have shamed this court today, Saralyn. We will discuss this privately. But the princess said nothing more. She turned and walked toward the great doors, her long gown trailing behind her. Before she left, she glanced back at Elias and said quietly, Do not be afraid, human. I will not take back my choice. That night, the palace buzzed with rumors. Across the empire, messages spread through the stars. The Princess of Virelia has chosen a human. Some laughed, some raged, and some whispered that perhaps the humans were more than anyone had thought. In his chamber, Elias couldn't sleep. He stood at the window, staring out at the twin suns fading below the horizon. He still didn't understand why she had chosen him, or what it would mean for both their worlds. Outside, the night sky of Auralis shimmered with countless stars. Somewhere in that vast darkness, two destinies had just collided, one born in a palace of light, the other from a small blue world far away. Neither knew what awaited them, but one truth was already clear. The galaxy would never be the same again. The morning after the choosing ceremony, the palace of Auralis was no longer filled with music and joy. It was filled with anger, confusion, and whispers. The choice of Princess Saralyn had shaken the empire like a storm. No one could believe that she, the heir to the greatest throne in the galaxy, had chosen a human, a being from a world barely known to most of the Virelian nobles. Across the galaxy, news spread through glowing data screens and whisper networks. The princess has chosen a Terran. Is it true? A human? The Emperor will never allow it. In the palace council chambers, powerful voices argued. Alien lords with glittering scales and shining eyes shouted at one another. The Council of Elders, beings thousands of years old, demanded that the decision be reversed. This is madness. Lord Therak roared, his massive claws slamming on the crystal table. A human cannot share the royal bloodline. He is unworthy, insignificant. Others agreed, their voices rising like thunder. But the Emperor sat in silence at the head of the chamber. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with fury. Summon my daughter, he finally said. She will answer for this herself. Princess Saralyn entered the chamber moments later. She walked with steady grace, her long silver-blue hair flowing behind her. Every pair of eyes followed her as she stopped before her father. "Daughter," the Emperor began, "do you understand what your decision has caused?" The nobles are outraged. "The council is demanding that I undo your choice." "I understand, father," she said calmly. "Then why?" he demanded. "Why humiliate this family? Why choose a human?" Saralyn looked around the room at the angry faces of the lords and elders. "Because for once I wanted to make a choice for myself," she said softly. "Not one for your council, not one for your empire," Lord Theric growled. "You speak of freedom, but you are bound to duty. That is what keeps the empire strong." Saralyn turned to him. "And what has your duty brought us? Endless wars? Fear and silence? You call it strength, I call it chains." The chamber fell silent. No one had ever spoken to the council in such a way. The Emperor's expression softened slightly. He was proud of her courage, but he could not show it. "You may think your words are noble," he said, "but this choice will destroy you. And it may destroy him too." Saralyn met his gaze. "Then let it. At least it will be my decision." Without waiting for permission to leave, she turned and walked out. In another part of the palace, Elias Ward sat inside a small guest room, surrounded by guards. The window showed the glowing skyline of the city below. He couldn't believe what had happened. He had come to Oralis as a simple observer, not to be part of politics or royal affairs. Now half the galaxy seemed to want him dead. A tall alien guard entered the room. "The Emperor has ordered that you remain here until the council decides your fate," the guard said coldly. Elias sighed. "My fate, huh? Sounds serious?" "It is," the guard replied. "Many believe you have insulted the royal blood. Some demand you be sent back to Earth immediately." Elias rubbed the back of his neck. "Believe me, I'd go if I could. I didn't ask for this." He didn't notice the door opening again behind him until a soft voice said, "I know you didn't." He turned quickly. Princess Saralyn stood there without guards or attendants. Elias blinked. "You're not supposed to be here, are you?" She smiled faintly. "No, but I go where I please." She stepped closer, her eyes calm and curious. "You look uncomfortable, human." "That's one way to put it," Elias said. "Half your empire wants me gone. The other half probably wants to feed me to something with teeth." Saralyn laughed quietly. "You are not wrong." She looked out the window. "They fear what they do not understand. They think your world is weak because it does not glow like ours, or float among the stars like ours does." Elias crossed his arms. "Earth's not weak. We've just had to survive in difficult places." "I know," she said softly. "That's why I chose you." He frowned. "You don't even know me." Saralyn turned to face him, her expression serious now. "You think I made that choice without reason? For my entire life, people have looked at me and seen only what they want. Power, beauty, advantage. But you," he tilted his head. "Me? You looked at me like I was real," she said quietly. "Not like a symbol or a jewel to win. You didn't kneel. You didn't flatter me. That was the first honest thing anyone's done in years." Elias didn't know what to say. He had never expected such words from an alien princess. Finally, he said, "Maybe you just need better friends." Saralyn smiled again, but there was sadness in her eyes. "Maybe. But I have learned that honesty is rarer than gold in this palace." They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars fade beyond the twin suns. Then Elias asked softly, "What happens now?" "The council will try to force me to change my decision," she said. "If I refuse, they may exile you. Or worse," he exhaled slowly. "That's comforting." Saralyn looked at him. "Do you regret it?" "That I chose you?" Elias thought for a moment. "I don't know. My life just turned upside down, but no, I don't regret it." Her expression softened. "Then neither do I." Later that day, the tension in the Empire only grew. Across Oralis, protest began among the noble houses. Some claimed the princess was under human influence. Others accused Earth of trying to control the throne. The Emperor held back the chaos as best he could, but he knew things were slipping out of control. Lord Theric, angry and proud, took matters into his own hands. He challenged Elias publicly, demanding that the human prove himself worthy of even standing in the same room as the princess. The announcement spread fast. Within hours, a crowd filled the central courtyard of the palace. Elias had never fought in an arena before. He wasn't a soldier, but when the challenge came, Saralyn's eyes found his. He saw fear, not for herself, but for him. He stepped forward. "If I refuse, what happens?" he asked the guards. "You will be seen as a coward," one replied, "and the princess's name will be shamed." Elias nodded slowly. "Then I guess I fight." As he stepped into the courtyard, the crowd went silent. Lord Theric stood across from him, nearly twice his height, his body covered in crystal armor that shimmered with light. His claws glowed with plasma energy. "This is your last chance, human," Theric said. "Leave now or face humiliation." Elias raised his hands calmly. "I've been humiliated before. It's not that bad." A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd, even from those who hated him. The signal was given. The fight began. Theric charged forward, striking with blinding speed. Elias dodged, barely avoiding a glowing claw. His human reflexes were sharp, but the alien was stronger, faster, more powerful. Still, Elias didn't fight like the aliens. He didn't rely on strength. He relied on movement, timing, and stubbornness. Each time Theric struck, Elias dodged or redirected the blow. He waited, studying patterns, breathing carefully. Finally, when Theric lunged forward in anger, Elias rolled aside and grabbed one of the alien's arm plates, using the alien's momentum to twist him off balance. Theric fell hard, his armor cracking against the crystal floor. The crowd gasped. Elias stood over him, panting. "You should have aimed slower," he said simply. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then slowly, the crowd began to cheer. Even some of the nobles nodded in surprise. Saralyn smiled proudly from her balcony. Her voice rang out, "Enough. This fight is over. The human has proven his courage." Theric rose slowly, glaring at Elias, but he said nothing. As the sun set over the city, the whispers changed. Some still hated the human, but others began to speak differently. Maybe humans are stronger than we thought. Maybe the princess saw something we didn't. That night, as the lights of Oralis glowed over the palace, Saralyn met Elias in the quiet gardens. "You fought well," she said. Elias smiled tiredly. "I fought lucky." "No," she said softly. "You fought like a human." And for the first time in many years, the princess of the Varelian Empire laughed freely under the twin moon, while somewhere far away, the fate of two worlds began to intertwine forever. The days that followed the duel were filled with both admiration and danger. Word spread across the Empire that a human, a simple engineer from Earth, had defeated Lord Theric, one of the strongest nobles in the Varelian court. Some called it luck, others called it skill, but all agreed on one thing. The human had changed everything. Elias Ward had become a symbol. Some admired him as a brave outsider, others hated him as a threat to their order. And at the center of it all stood Princess Saralyn, whose calm defiance still echoed through every corridor of the shining palace. The morning sun rose over the floating towers of HFY, painting the golden city in soft hues. Saralyn stood on her balcony, her thoughts distant, the twin suns reflected in her eyes as she watched the people below, traders, soldiers, nobles, and children. For the first time, she saw humans among them. The Earth delegation had grown respected after Elias's victory. They were invited to councils and meetings, their voices now heard instead of ignored. Still, not everyone was happy. A shadow of danger lingered in the air, whispers of conspiracy, hidden anger, and secret meetings among the noble houses. Saralyn knew that peace was only on the surface. Beneath it, trouble waited. Captain Rylan, her trusted guard, approached quietly. "Your Highness," he said, "you should rest. You haven't slept much these past days." She smiled faintly. "I cannot rest while the council plans in silence. They hide something, Rylan, I can feel it." The captain hesitated. "Perhaps it concerns—" "The human?" Saralyn's gaze hardened. "They dare not touch him. He is under my protection." Rylan bowed slightly. "Forgive me, but that may not stop them. There are those who see your choice as a stain upon royal blood. They will not forgive it easily." Saralyn turned away, her voice quiet but strong. "Then let them try. They will see that I am not so easy to silence." In the guest wing of the palace, Elias was beginning to understand the meaning of living among royalty. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him. Some curious, some friendly, others filled with silent hate. Even the servants whispered when he passed. He didn't belong here, and he knew it. Still, he refused to leave. Not because of pride, but because he had seen something real in the princess, something lonely and human. As he adjusted a small, mechanical tool on his wristband, something he used for his engineering work, a knock came at his door. When he opened it, Saralyn stood there. She wore no crown this time, just a simple white gown. Her hair was loose, flowing down her back. "Your Highness," Elias said, bowing slightly. "If you keep visiting me like this, people will start talking." She smiled. "They already are." "Let them." He gestured for her to come in. The room was small compared to the royal chambers, but clean and quiet. She sat near the window, her gaze on the distant suns. "They plan against you," she said quietly. "The council, the old lords. Even my father cannot stop them if they move in secret." Elias leaned against the table. "So they want me gone?" "Gone. Or worse," she replied softly. He sighed. "I figured that was coming. Nobles don't like surprises." "You don't seem afraid," she said. He gave a small smile. "Fear's not something you get to keep long where I'm from. Earth's a dangerous place. We learn to stand even when scared." She turned to look at him. "That's what makes you different. You stand even when the universe tells you to kneel." For a long moment neither spoke. The silence was heavy but not uncomfortable. Then Saralyn rose. "There is a council gathering tonight. They will speak of you again. I will attend. And I will defend you." Elias frowned. "You don't have to do that." "I do," she said firmly. "I made my choice. I will not hide from it." That night, the council chamber glowed with blue and gold light. The emperor sat at the head, surrounded by the elders and noble lords. The topic was clear before anyone spoke. "The human," one elder began, "has upset the balance of our empire. He has humiliated one of our strongest warriors and confused the people. This cannot stand." Another nodded. "He must be removed quietly." "For the good of the throne," Saralyn stood. "You speak of removing a man who has done nothing but defend himself. Is that justice?" Lord Theric glared across the room. "He is dangerous. He brings chaos. He brings truth," she said sharply. "He shows us that our greatness means nothing if it is built on arrogance." The Emperor's voice cut through the noise. "Enough. The matter is not simple. The human is under royal protection, but if harm comes to him, the blame will fall upon this council." The lords exchanged dark looks, but they bowed. "As you command, Emperor," they said in unison. Saralyn could tell from their eyes that the danger was far from over. 2 nights later, the danger became real. Elias was walking through the garden under the twin moons, thinking about home. The night air was cool and glowing trees lit the path. He heard footsteps behind him, soft, careful. Too careful, he turned. Shadows moved among the tall plants. He saw the flash of a blade and ducked just in time. The attacker struck again, tall, armored, face hidden beneath a mask. Elias rolled aside, picking up a fallen metal rod from a nearby fountain. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. They fought in silence, Elias dodging, blocking, striking when he could. The assassin was fast and skilled, but Elias fought with something they didn't expect: stubbornness. He didn't try to win. He tried to survive. And that made him unpredictable. Finally, he managed to knock the attacker's blade away. He swung the rod and hit the mask, cracking it. The attacker staggered back, revealing glowing green eyes, the mark of the noble house of Theric. Before Elias could say a word, the assassin turned and fled into the shadows. Moments later, Saralyn and her guards arrived. She ran to Elias, worry in her eyes. "You're hurt." "Just a scratch," he said, wiping blood from his arm. "But I think your nobles are done talking." Her expression hardened. "They've crossed the line." She turned to Rylan. "Find the attacker. Search every corridor." "Yes, my princess," Rylan said, and the guards scattered. Saralyn looked back at Elias. "You cannot stay here anymore. It's not safe," he shook his head. "I'm not running." "Elias—" "No," he interrupted gently. "You said your people think I'm weak. If I leave now, they'll be right. I'm staying until they see otherwise." She stared at him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Very well. But from now on, you will not walk alone. My guards will stay with you." He smiled faintly. "I'll try not to be too much trouble." She looked at him, her voice quiet. You already are, but it's trouble worth having. Later that night, as Saralyn stood alone in her chamber, she gazed at the stars through the wide glass walls. She thought of Elias, the strange, quiet man from a faraway world. He had no army, no title, no power. Yet he had changed her world simply by being himself. She whispered to the stars, "Why do I feel that the galaxy is shifting because of him?" The stars gave no answer, but deep in her heart she knew it was true. Far below in the silent city, lights flickered in hidden rooms as the conspirators gathered again. Their leader's voice was cold and sharp. The princess grows defiant. The human grows brave. If we do not act soon, the Empire itself may fall to their foolish hearts, and so, in the dark halls of Oralis, a new plan began, one that would test both the princess and the human beyond anything they had ever faced. The night was darker than usual on Oralis Prime, the twin moons hidden behind thick clouds. The golden city glowed faintly, but beneath the light shadows moved like whispers. Elias Ward, unaware of the danger approaching, was walking through a quiet corridor of the palace. He carried a small datapad, reviewing schematics of some Varelian technology he had been studying. He had grown more confident in the palace despite the hostility of the nobles, but tonight confidence would not be enough. From the shadows, cloaked figures emerged silently. Advanced technology masked their movements. Before Elias could react, a net of energy shot from the wall, entangling him. He struggled, but the energy pulses tightened around him like a vice. "Elias!" a voice shouted. It was too late. The cloaked figures lifted him from the floor using anti-gravity clamps and moved swiftly through secret passages. His shouts echoed through the corridors, but no one came to his aid. The conspirators had planned this perfectly. Even the guards were diverted. Within minutes, Elias was taken to a hidden fortress on the desert moon of Narex, far from the palace and the watchful eyes of the Empire. Back in her chambers, Princess Saralyn felt a sudden chill in her heart. Something was wrong. She had sensed a disturbance, subtle but undeniable. She hurried through the palace, calling for Rylan and the guards. "What is it, Princess?" Rylan asked, seeing her urgency. "My human, something has happened to him," she said, her voice tight. "I can feel it." The guards quickly scanned the communication networks and confirmed the worst. Elias had disappeared. Saralyn's face hardened. "They've taken him." Rylan looked shocked. "The conspirators?" Saralyn nodded. "They think they can control me through fear. They are wrong. We leave now." Without waiting for permission or council approval, Saralyn gathered her personal guard. She donned her battle cloak. Not a gown this time, but practical armor designed for combat. Her eyes glowed softly in the dim light, a signal of her royal authority. "This is the first time the galaxy will see the princess as she truly is," she said quietly to Rylan. "We go to Narex." The journey to Narex was swift and tense. Saralyn's fleet moved through the dark space lanes, avoiding patrols and sensors of the Empire's loyalists who had yet to hear of the kidnapping. The human ships that had come to the palace as part of the Earth delegation joined her fleet without hesitation. Inside her command ship, Saralyn stood at the control console, eyes fixed on the fortress that glowed faintly on the desert moon below, her lips pressed into a thin line. "This is where they will learn not to underestimate the princess," she whispered. Elias, meanwhile, was locked in a cell far below the surface. The room was cold and empty, with only a faint glow from the ceiling panels. He tried to analyze his surroundings, looking for weaknesses in the restraints. The conspirators watched him from a control room above. One of them, A tall noble with dark crystal armor spoke coldly. The princess cannot resist us forever. Once she gives up her human, our plan is complete. The empire will be ours. Elias, hearing nothing but the faint hum of energy in the walls, remained calm. He knew he could not fight physically. His strength alone was not enough. But he could survive and wait for the right moment. Outside, the desert winds of Narex whipped against the fortress walls, carrying a faint sense of danger. Saralyn's fleet approached, firing precision pulses to disable external shields. Her personal guard moved swiftly, boarding the fortress through a hidden hatch in the side wall. Saralyn herself led the charge, her steps confident and fearless. "Remember," she said to her soldiers, "we fight for him. Not for glory, not for power, for justice." The halls of the fortress were dark, filled with shadows and traps. The conspirators had expected an attack, but they had not expected the princess herself to lead it. Every hallway Saralyn entered, every guard that tried to block her path was met with strategy, precision, and her calm authority. Finally, they reached the cell where Elias was held. His restraints were strong, but when he saw her, something unspoken passed between them, a bond of trust and understanding. "Saralyn," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Elias," she replied softly. She struck the control panel beside his cell, releasing the energy net. "We leave now." Before they could escape, alarms blared. The conspirators had realized the breach and sent reinforcements. A corridor ahead was blocked by elite guards. Saralyn's eyes glowed brighter, her voice carrying a command that made even the strongest pause. "Stand aside," she said, and the guards hesitated, or faced the wrath of the Princess of Oralis. Some stepped back. Others attacked. Saralyn and her human moved forward together, blending strategy, courage, and speed. Elias had never fought alongside anyone like this, but her confidence gave him courage. He blocked attacks, pulled doors open, and followed her without hesitation. The final confrontation came in the main chamber of the fortress. The noble who had orchestrated the kidnapping stepped forward, armored and glowing with deadly energy. "You think you can take him from me?" he demanded. Saralyn stepped forward, her armor gleaming faintly. "No, you think you can control the Empire through fear. You are wrong." The battle was fierce. The noble's energy attacks illuminated the chamber, but Saralyn moved with grace and precision, deflecting blasts and striking when possible. Elias stayed close, his human ingenuity helping her navigate the traps. Together, they became an unexpected force, a team that no one could have predicted. Finally, with a coordinated strike, they overcame the noble. The conspirators were defeated, and the fortress lay in silence except for the hum of damaged energy panels. Outside, Saralyn and Elias emerged into the cool desert night. Her guards and the Earth delegation gathered around them, awe and respect in their eyes. "You did well," Saralyn said, turning to Elias. "You could have stayed back." "But you didn't," Elias shook his head. "You wouldn't have survived without me. We both did this together." She smiled faintly, her hand brushing against his arm. "It is rare," she said quietly, "to find someone who sees you, not what you represent. And rarer still to have them stand by you in the darkest hour." He looked at her, a small smile forming. "Then I guess we make a good team." Her gaze drifted to the horizon where the twin moons reflected in the desert sands. "A team," she repeated softly. "Yes, together we are stronger than they ever imagined." Back on Oralis Prime, the news spread quickly. The princess had led a successful rescue. Not only had she saved the human, but she had done so without the approval of the Council or the Emperor. Across the Empire, the message was clear. Saralyn would no longer be controlled by fear, tradition, or politics. She chose her own path, and she chose a human to walk it with her. Even the Emperor could not hide his awe. The defiance of his daughter had shifted something deep in the hearts of many: respect, admiration, and even fear of what the princess might do next. That night, as Saralyn and Elias stood on the deck of their ship, looking at the stars, she whispered, "Do you know what this means, human?" He shook his head. "That we survived?" She smiled softly. "No. That they now know we are not to be underestimated. That the heart can be stronger than armies. And that the galaxy itself will have to change to face us." Elias looked at her, understanding dawning. "Then this is just the beginning." Saralyn's eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. "Yes, and from now on we face it together. And somewhere far away, Across the endless stars, the Empire began to realize that a human had changed the fate of worlds, not through power, but through courage, honesty, and the choice of a princess who saw him for who he truly was. The palace of Prime was alive with energy. The golden city shimmered beneath the twin suns, and the streets were filled with beings from across the Empire. News of Princess Saralyn's daring rescue of Elias Ward had spread faster than any royal decree. For the first time in centuries, the Empire felt something new: hope. Not the kind that comes from fear or power, but the kind that comes from courage, unity, and honesty. Inside the palace, Saralyn walked with purpose. Her silver blue hair flowed behind her, and her violet eyes held a calm fire. By her side, Elias moved with quiet confidence. Despite all the dangers he had faced, he had learned to walk among the stars not as a visitor, but as someone who had earned a place. The council chamber awaited them. The nobles, some still bitter from past events, were gathered, whispering and exchanging uneasy glances. The Emperor sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. Yet even he could not hide the faint pride in his eyes. Saralyn stepped forward. "The human stands beside me," she said clearly. "He has faced danger, survived, and acted with courage when many of you faltered. He has proven that strength comes not from blood or title, but from heart and action." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some lords scoffed, but others looked down, ashamed of their previous arrogance. Elias spoke softly. "I am no warrior, no noble. I am an engineer from a small blue world, but I have learned that the galaxy is not ruled by fear alone. It is ruled by those who act with courage even in impossible situations." The Emperor leaned forward. "You speak wisely, human. And the princess? You have chosen well." Lord Therax, still present, clenched his fists but did not speak. The lessons of defeat and failure had humbled him, if only slightly. Outside the chamber, the people of the Empire waited. News had spread that the princess and the human would address the galaxy today. Saralyn and Elias stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The crowd stretched as far as the eye could see. Aliens of all shapes, sizes, and colors had gathered. Some were noble, some merchants, some warriors, but all watched in awe. Saralyn raised her hand. Her voice echoed across the plaza. "People of Oralis, today marks a new beginning. For centuries we have valued power, titles, and control over courage, truth, and honesty. Today we recognize that even the smallest among us can change the fate of worlds." She gestured to Elias. "This human came to us with no claim to power. He has no army, no crown, no fortune. Yet through his courage and honesty, he has stood beside me, defended me, and proven what it truly means to be strong." The crowd erupted in cheers. For the first time, a human's name was celebrated across the stars, not as a visitor or outsider, but as a hero. Elias, still slightly overwhelmed, turned to Saralyn. "You really mean all this?" he asked. "I do," she said. "You are not a symbol, Elias. You are the person who reminded me why I chose my own path. Together, we show the galaxy that courage and heart matter more than bloodlines." In the days that followed, the Empire began to change. The Council, once rigid and unforgiving, slowly adapted. The nobles who had opposed the Union found themselves inspired by Elias's courage and Saralyn's defiance. Secret meetings became less about conspiracy and more about cooperation. Even the Emperor, who had spent centuries observing the political games of the Empire, acknowledged a truth he could not ignore. The human had changed the galaxy without seeking glory, only by standing true to himself. "Perhaps," the Emperor said quietly to Saralyn, "there is much to learn from outsiders. Perhaps the stars have more to teach us than we imagined." Saralyn smiled. "And perhaps they always have. We just needed to open our eyes." As months passed, Saralyn and Elias continued to grow closer, not just as partners, but as companions who respected each other's differences and strengths. Elias learned the ways of the Empire, understanding the cultures, technologies, and politics of 1,000 worlds. Saralyn learned from Elias as well, The human perspective, grounded in survival, courage, and humility, gave her insight she had never had before. Together they faced challenges, not alone, but united. Threats from rebellious nobles were met with strategy and courage. Trade disputes were solved through negotiation and understanding. And slowly, the Empire began to thrive in ways it never had before. One evening on the balcony of their shared chambers, Saralyn and Elias looked out at the stars. "Do you ever miss Earth?" Saralyn asked quietly. Elias smiled faintly. "Sometimes, but this is where I belong now. Not because I am needed, but because I choose to be." She reached out, taking his hand. "And I choose you. Not because you are strong or powerful or from another world, but because you are human, and that has changed everything." They stood together, hand in hand, watching as the stars reflected in the twin moons above Prime. News of their union spread across the galaxy. Messages of respect and admiration came from worlds far and wide. Beings who had once dismissed humans as weak now sent ambassadors, eager to understand the species that had captured the heart of a princess and changed the course of an empire. Elias became a symbol of hope, proof that even the simplest person, from the smallest world, could make a difference in the galaxy. And Saralyn became more than a princess. She became a leader who had chosen love, courage, and truth over tradition, fear, and power. One day, while walking through the Grand Palace gardens, Elias paused. "Do you think it will ever end? The jealousy, the danger?" Saralyn looked at him, calm and steady. "No, there will always be challenges. But we face them together, and together, we are stronger than they will ever expect." He nodded. "I never thought a human could survive in a palace of gold, let alone change an empire." "Humans survive because they adapt," she said, smiling. "And some humans have hearts strong enough to change galaxies." He laughed softly. "I guess I'm learning that now. And the galaxy is learning it too," she added, her eyes glowing with a faint violet light, a sign of her royal power, but now also of her hope and vision. Years later, the story of the princess and the human became legend. Across thousands of worlds, tales were told of a courageous human who stood beside a princess, not for power or glory, but for honesty, trust, and love. The Varelian Empire flourished under Saralyn's leadership. Her choices, guided by Elias's human perspective, brought peace and prosperity. The nobles who had opposed her learned respect for courage over tradition, and humans, once underestimated, were now regarded as allies and equals across the stars. In the quiet moments, Saralyn and Elias would look at each other, knowing that their bond had not only saved each other but had changed the course of an entire galaxy. And so, under the twin suns of Prime, with the stars stretching endlessly above, the princess whispered to her human, as she had once whispered to the night sky, "You were the choice that changed everything." Elias took her hand and smiled. "And you were the choice that showed me why it mattered." The galaxy watched,